We're good.
Yep. Well, we'll have to take it to start the globe or plug mine in, you guys. We got to tell Bob and that we're live.
Got to promote those people.
Yeah. So go to attendees. Couldn't go to attendees. We gotta go. Can you do it from here? Okay. Oh.
There's Linda Lee Dwyer.
There she is. Down, 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 down. There's Lydia and oh, there you go. And then
Bob has his hand up too.
yeah, Lydia.
And then who else?
Bob.
Where is he?
These are the hand ups are.
Up at the top where the hands up.
Are you?
Please tell them we're live. Sorry.
Okay, we're live now. I think we just promoted you, Mr. Griffin. I think we've got all the board members here, I think. Okay, good. So we're live, Mr. Griffin, so we're ready to go.
Okay.
And
Welcome.
this is Armando. I'm the interpreter. Just as an FYI.
No, I wanna call the meeting to order. Do you want to say your piece here, Armando, before we put you in the translation mode?
Sure. I can go ahead and say that, and then you can switch me over. Do you want me to go and do that now?
Please.
Or?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Buenas tardes, yo soy Armando Ramírez. Voy a ser el intérprete que les va a estar interpretando hoy durante la reunión de la mesa directiva. En la parte de abajo usted va a ver un globo. Si usted hace clic en este globo, lo va a llevar a la página o al cuarto de interpretación. Muchas gracias.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna do roll call. Well, I gotta find, here the boxes keep moving. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, you're muted.
Present.
Okay, Trustee Dwyer,
Present.
Trustee Land,
Present.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm here. We're all here. I'm going to report out from closed session. In closed session, the board, upon motion of Trustee Hanley and seconded by Trustee Land, moved to approve a special education settlement with a vote of 5-0. Okay, and I've got one more announcement here before we actually get into the meeting. This is a public meeting of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. If you wish to make a comment about an agenda item or during comments or during the public comments section at the beginning of the agenda, please send an email to comments@SMUHSD.org with your name, email address, and your Zoom name if different, and the item under which you would like to comment. The board president will call on you. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to ask the superintendent to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay, Ms. Chalkley, are there any public comments that are attached to an item?
Yes, we have Kaylin Lubke, who has been promoted to panelist, so she is making a public comment.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hello.
You have 3 minutes and the timer is sitting there ready to go.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylin Lubke, and I'm a junior at Aragon High School, and I'm speaking to the board to insist that Asynchronous Wednesdays be implemented across the district. For months, we have sat idly by as school administrators, students, and families have been promoting this change, but unfortunately, little action has been taken, and our students continue to suffer as a direct consequence of this. What we are asking for is simple, effective, and the best solution for everyone in the long run. At the moment, the Wednesday class structure is a one-size-fits-all sort of situation, and it does not fit for the majority of students. While a select few prosper, most students find them mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausting. Staring at a computer screen all day, jumping from topic to topic every half hour, all while the world crumbles outside the walls of our home, it's not hard to see why during this pandemic, 1 in 3 American students report feeling unhappy or depressed. 1 in 3 are concerned with having their basic needs met, and 1 in 4 report worsening emotional and cognitive health, including sleep loss, feeling constant stress, and a loss of self-confidence. Online learning does contribute to this, and unfortunately, changing that is unavoidable. But the Wednesday schedule amplifies this anxiety due to its current unproductive and stressful nature. Alternatively, Asynchronous Wednesdays would give students the break they so desperately need to recover from the emotional and physical strain associated with online learning while having the freedom to engage in the educational activities most valuable to them. Students who need direct help would be able to attend the office hours teachers hold, and all students would have the flexibility to complete their own assignments in depth and in order that works best for them. It also gives students buffer time for self-care, exercise, and getting help in dealing with stress, which is important for our well-being in school and in life. Some students may also need this time to work or help loved ones, as families are increasingly financially and emotionally strained. There's also something to be said that independent learning is an important skill as our students enter the world as workers, artists, and citizens. And as a school district, we can and should train students in this. I really appreciate the efforts of the board to navigate these difficult times. This is an important decision for our community, and we ask that you truly listen to our concerns and propose solutions rather than making a decision in a vacuum or uphold some abstract ideal. We are simply asking for a seat at the table and for our concerns and requests to be taken seriously. For our health, our education, and our future, please implement Asynchronous Wednesdays. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, board comments. Trustee Andrade, does any board member have a comment? Trustee Land.
I'll make mine brief. In the background, you can see I'm just very proud that my school was on TV today on NBC during the 6 o'clock news. We were talking about testing. We are doing 6th grade testing for COVID, is pool testing as a cheap way to really identify anyone who has gotten COVID. And it's been a system that's just been in place. And I'm just very proud of the school that we got to be on TV this week. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, I got a comment, and it won't be as brief as Trustee Land. I don't know if you can see my hat there. For everybody, this is African American History Month. Okay, it's 95 years we've been celebrating African Americans' role in the American story. This particular hat is a Tuskegee Airman. Oh, you can't see it. I took it off, and this particular hat is actually a hat that commemorates the Tuskegee Airmen. And that was a group of fighters, pilots who fought in World War II. And they actually had to fight 2 wars. Number one, they had to fight the war of racism and segregation here just to have the right to fly. And then they got to, once they fought this war over here of racism, they actually got to get involved in World War II. Now, the interesting thing, most of the Tuskegee Airmen are gone, and they did a marvelous job. And the reason I care about them so much is my family's from Tuskegee, and it was Tuskegee Field where they did a lot of their training. And the interesting thing, we actually had a San Mateo High School graduate who was actually one of the Tuskegee Airmen. His name was Les Williams, and he actually was the first bomber pilot, because they had fighters and they had bombers, and he was the first bomber pilot as a captain in the Army Air Corps. And he graduated along with my mother back pre-war, and did a marvelous job, and came back here and actually had a career as a dance. He taught dance tap on San Mateo Drive and was also a lawyer. And I just wanted to take this time to recognize some of the accomplishments that some of the African Americans have done, particularly with the local tie-in. So thank you. Here's the cap. So, okay, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to have an item? Actually, forgive me for asking this. At one point, we had been approving the agenda as presented. We're not going to do that anymore. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish an item pulled? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I think Ms. Zuniga has her hand up.
I just wanted to make another comment after what you were saying, Bob, was that the Tuskegee Airmen also protected the white pilots from getting shot down, and they were the ones that were in the front lines usually, really. So their contributions to protecting our soldiers too were very important. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for adding that in. There's actually, I think everybody saw them. They saw the movie, The Red Tails, which was about the Tuskegee Airmen, highly commercial success. So anyway,
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so who was I couldn't see lips moving. Trustee Dwyer made the motion, Trustee Land made the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land?
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer?
Yes.
Trustee Hanley?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So the motion passes 5-0. Okay, we're going to move on to section K, report of the superintendent.
I'll just mention that I'll cede my time to our three most junior principals who have agreed to make a few comments here, and so they'll go through that. I'll let you take it away from here. So with that, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, President Griffin, board members, Dr. Scully, members of the board, members of the cabinet. I'm waiting for the slide deck to pop up. Thank you. It's my pleasure tonight you can click to the next slide, please, to talk a little bit about equity in action at our site. So what you'll see this evening is a little flavor of what's happening at Aragon, Cappuccino, and Mills, but we know a lot of this work is also occurring at our sister schools across the district. Next slide, please. My name is Valerie Arbizu, and I am the principal at Aragon High School. And I'm excited tonight to talk about connection and engagement and how that work is happening at Aragon. First of all, we've established new Tier 1 expectations. That's for all kids every day. We've talked about connection and engagement strategies at all of our staff and professional development meetings this year, which have resulted some outstanding fall 2020 grades from our students. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we're stepping toward our equity work. Next slide, please. So we've established a new expectation system for our students, and it's based on Aragon Cares. And you can take a look at what that means. It's connection, achievement, respecting each other, engaging, and showing spirit. And we've used this as the backbone for all of our work really this year. And we focused on connection and engagement because we know that in this distance learning environment, that's really what we need to do with our kids, is connect and engage. We've also embedded equity conversations into all of our expectations. We've additionally taken Aragon Cares and used it to begin reworking our behavior expectation matrix so that as we come back together in the fall, hopefully sooner than the fall, we'll be able to start talking about all of these elements and what they mean at Aragon with our students. And we're continuing to use data sets from Panorama and from our site surveys to identify additional areas for improvement. Next slide, please. Distribution events. So we know that hands-on learning is what is critical to connection and engagement of all students. And that's a big deal when we look at our equity work. So we're working hard with our teachers to put materials in students' hands so that it's not just a distance learning Zoom environment that they're learning from. So that includes a lot of supplies from our VAPA and CTE courses, manipulatives and study packs from our math classes, lab kits for all levels of our science classes, consumable novels for students in support classes so they can write directly in the book. It also included some sweet treats and stickers from our PTSO and from our ASB because it's important to get some goodies sometimes, some of those nice things that you remember from school, and continued tech materials and supports. So we've had 6 distribution days. This is kind of what it looks like in our lower lot. We've served at least 1,300 students in each of them. And we've held some of our evening, some of our pickup times later into the evening so that all families can come and get them. For students who aren't able to come and pick up materials, we do deliver them in some cases, and then we'll make additional appointments available as they are needed so that every student gets what they need to learn. Next slide, please. And finally, this is some of the steps that we were taking toward equity. I'm really proud of our staff and the work that we're looking at doing with this book, Grading for Equity. So I'm excited that we had over 42 different staff members throw their hat into the ring to start talking about what it means to really grade with equity in mind. We invited Milton Reynolds to our last staff meeting, and we'll be working with him 2 more times this spring to focus on equitable education practices. We're exploring a new course called Agency and Social Justice, and this is a collaboration between an English teacher and a social studies teacher as a response to our students really wanting to make changes in their world, and we'd like to help them do that. So that's where this class is coming from. And then finally, we have taken a shift with our WASC action plan. It's attached there for your viewing pleasure at another time. And our 3 goals are equity and achievement, MTSS implementation, and inclusive programs. So we're really working hard to make sure that all of our kids get what they need in order to succeed and become whole, beautiful people as they graduate from Aragon High School. So that's just an idea of what's happening at Aragon with professional development and staff training. And now I would like to turn it over to Ms. Dazinski, who's going to talk a little bit about what's happening at Mills. Next slide, please.
Good evening, President Griffin, Board of Trustees, Dr. Skelly, and Cabinet. Thank you for your comments recognizing Black History Month and sharing the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. In recognition of Lunar New Year, my Zoom background is an image of the Mills Dragon. Under the leadership of the legendary Wayne Phillips, the Mills Dragon team has participated in the San Francisco Lunar New Year Parade for nearly over 2 decades. And while we won't be participating this year, the spirit of the Mills Dragon lives on as we patiently await the opportunity to showcase our Mills pride. This evening, I'm eager to share with you some of the student and teacher work during distance learning as we focus on the core principles of equity and delivering rigorous learning experiences in a warm and supportive environment that connects with our students' identity in meaningful ways. Early this spring semester, teachers and staff shared with each other high leverage strategies that they discovered after a semester of distance learning that worked best to engage students in this environment. As you can see, the list is plentiful, from podcasts to daily one-on-one check-ins with students, to home visits, tech tools, to starting classes each day with a warm welcome to students. Our teachers and staff really really are working hard to put engagement at the forefront of learning each and every day, and rethinking and retooling lessons that they may have polished over a number of years for the distance learning environment. Next slide, please. This slide is an example from our algebra PLC, who despite distance learning continues to use algebra tiles, which are manipulatives to express algebraic expressions, and that really tap into our visual learners' strengths. And it's an example of how they've taken some of those in-person lessons with algebra tiles and transformed them to a digital learning environment. Next slide. This is an example from an art and video class, and it's a great example of a way that a teacher engaged students at the beginning of the semester to learn more about them and their identities and what they hold close to their hearts as learners. And by having students create these collages and sharing them with each other and the teacher, she was able to validate and affirm these identities throughout the curriculum and the content. Next slide, please. This slide shows a cooperative group project in ethnic studies that happened in the distance learning environment in breakout groups. This is a 9th grade class where students worked in small groups as they discussed the fundamentals of ethnic studies. Which is a course, of course, that challenges traditional views of history and narratives. And I think it's a great example of some very sophisticated thinking and learning by our 9th grade students. Next slide, please. This is an example of a question from Canvas. So you've heard about Canvas in previous presentations, and it is the main learning platform for distance learning that is used day in and day out by our teachers and students. And this is an example of an assessment that a teacher created and can deliver on Canvas. And it's an interesting question because it really asks the student to reflect on their own learning and growth and understanding of the content as it relates to the topic. Next slide, please. This final slide includes an example, 2 examples actually. The first one is from a PE teacher who has infused a great deal of social emotional learning in the PE curriculum during distance learning. The students have watched a series about people that have overcome significant barriers to success called the Believe in Yourself series. And then students created a mural of strength as a way to remind themselves how to stay resilient, especially during the pandemic. And the other example here is an example from an AP biology class, and it is a biodiversity field manual. It's only the first page. They are quite extensive in some cases, where the teacher has asked students to compile this field manual based on what they're learning in class. And during the last asynchronous day on February 3rd, had students take a walk outside in the natural environment and use the app iNaturalist, a free app, to identify a specimen to add to their field manual. So thank you for giving me a chance to share some of the exemplary teaching and learning that's happening at Mills.
Great, next slide, please. My name is Jesse Boyce, and I have the great privilege to be the principal at Cappuccino High School. Thanks for this opportunity, and shout out to all those who are tuning in from San Bruno this evening. The school board has asked some really important questions throughout the fall semester around how we're monitoring student engagement and re-engaging students when we notice inconsistent attendance and engagement. And so I bring to you one intervention that we are trying at CAP in a pilot year. And I do want to say that these types of initiatives are happening at all 7 school sites. So this is not necessarily unique to Cappuccino, but it's one example of an intervention that we've had the opportunity to pilot because of distance learning. I want to specifically appreciate the district office. They offered us additional incentives in terms of grant funding for innovative ways to support students throughout distance learning. And I think it's led to some really interesting creativity and innovation. Next slide, please. So this is called check-in, check-out. We lovingly call it Chico, and it's not an entire class. It's a 6 to 10 week intervention where a staff member monitors 2 students closely, meets with them on Mondays and Fridays, and sends an affirmative email midweek. These students are identified because of teacher referrals, attendance monitoring by the attendance clerk and our dean and their school counselors. And so the idea is that with this additional check-in, we hope to improve their attendance, their grades, and their, the sense of self and motivation. On the right, there is our multi-tiered system of supports, triangle, and this kind of falls in the middle in terms of an intervention. Next slide, please. So I bring to you some of the data. It's imperfect, but it's definitely a trend in the right direction. You'll notice that we want to see a higher blue line and a lower orangish yellow line. And as you can see over time throughout the fall semester, we initiated the pilot on October 30th when students were referred, and this cohort ran through January 6th, the end of the fall semester. So you'll notice that there was a steady improvement in students' grades. The cohort included 25 students in the fall semester, and we are going to have 30 students, I think, that we've just kind of launched with a new set. Next slide, please. Similarly, you'll see that disengagement disincreased. That's the number of periods a student was disengaged. So unfortunately, you'll find that October 30th, this group of students had numerous absences, unexcused or present but not engaged. And really happy to report that that decreased significantly over time. Again, acknowledging that there's still a lot of work to do, but clearly having a progress monitor and someone to check in with, seems to make a difference. Next slide, please. And finally, this one I think really matters to me personally, because obviously we want strong academic outcomes, but we also care how students feel about themselves. You'll see that blue circle is the lowest kind of indicator on how a student felt prior on the left-hand side to beginning check-in, check-out, and then you'll notice that is eliminated on the right-hand side when they completed their post-survey. So, clearly, initially that pilot cohort data was something for us to be proud about. Next slide, please. And here's some of the comments that students who participated shared. My favorite on here is they never stopped believing in me, and it kept me going. We know that students can do it, right? It's just the circumstances now are more challenging than ever. They may have a cheerleader in their house. They may have strong support in their house, but we know that households are different and people are experiencing the pandemic differently. So it's our job to, as Dr. Skelly often says, level the playing field. Next slide, please. And I think, Ms. Arbizu and Ms. Dazinski and I talked about this. You see a set of people here who have gone above and beyond during the pandemic. They have taken on check-in, check-out in addition to their normal responsibilities. And they quite literally have done everything tirelessly to support students. That said, they're not outliers. I'd love to say that they are, but they're like all of our other colleagues who are doing everything they can across the district under a lot of duress, personally, professionally, it's getting hard. But really with the best interest of students. So I think I speak for all the principals when I say thank you. Our staffs and our colleagues have just done wonderful things, and we are grateful, and we will keep doing our absolute best. Next slide, please. And I imagine, given the agenda, there's not going to be questions in this moment, but we are always happy to return, and we really do love the opportunity to share some of the things that we're doing at school sites. Again, we recognize that they're imperfect, but we will keep working tirelessly each and every day. Thank you for your time.
Are there any board questions? Trustee Land.
First, I just want to acknowledge the superintendent. He listened to us. I know this is something that several of us board members had requested. I just want to say thank you to the principals and to the staffs for really give us an eye onto what is actually happening on the ground. And this is exactly what I was looking for. So just Dr. Skelly, thank you. And principals, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see the work that you're doing.
Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Yes, I just wanted to say how amazing your school community is. I got a chance to meet with one of the classes last week, and I'm always just blown away by the students and just everything that they do, and their partnerships with the teachers, and just just how hopeful they are. So thank you for everything y'all do.
Trustees Dwyer.
I just want to say thank you. This is something that I've been asking for a very long time, so I really appreciate this. And I want to thank each principal who presented tonight, because we're supposed to be at 30,000 feet, but the real work is not done at 30,000 feet. The real work is done on the ground. That's where you are. And so in order to do our work, we need to know what you're doing so that we can support you and appreciate you, acknowledge you, the whole thing. So I thank all of you for the work you did in putting this presentation together for us, because I think it's really important to us. So thank you.
Okay. My comments, and I do want to thank you. Those presentations were just excellent. They were right to the point. They were energetic. They got us the information. And we're done, and we're out of here. And I appreciate that. Those are the way presentations should be. So, thank you very much. Any other comments on that item?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. K2, report of student board members. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. So we just heard from Kaylin, and I would like to just show my support really quickly for some of the things that she said. So obviously the first thing that I wanted to touch on really quickly is Asynchronous Wednesdays. As I and the other student board members have mentioned multiple times over the course of the school year, students still feel very strongly about asynchronous days. I want to continue to urge the board to adopt more of them within our schedule. I received an abundance of positive feedback from fellow students who really enjoyed last week's Asynchronous Wednesday. Something that was brought to my attention at the last UASB representative meeting that we had was that students feel that they would benefit from their teachers having some form of office hours during which they can pop in and ask a teacher a question about an assignment or just clarification on a topic that they're confused on. So that could be something that we could implement to make that a more positive experience for students. This, however, would be a completely optional opportunity that students can take advantage of if needed. Another thing that we would like to propose is making Asynchronous Wednesdays more of a site-wide issue, but Anush will go more into depth on that. I hope that you will continue to consider them and implement them within our schedule. The next thing that I wanted to bring up really quickly is that we feel as though very few of our peers and their parents truly understand some of the aspects of the back to school plan. I want to ensure that there is more transparency if the time does come where parents have to decide whether or not they want their kids to go back to school. I want to ensure that we adequately communicate what exactly it is that they would be signing up for. As a student who's pretty well versed in the back to school plan as the form it is in now, I just want to make sure that we provide the SMUHSD community with more transparency regarding some of the similarities between this version of live instruction and Zoom instruction that we have right now. Even during this live instruction, teachers would still be having to kind of cater to students that will be at home, which will most likely be a majority of the students, since a very limited number of students will be allowed in the physical classroom. But yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Right, thanks, Annalie. Just to piggyback off of that, we know that Burlingame parents are very vocal in their disapproval of Asynchronous Wednesdays. However, we can't cast a wide umbrella in our decision-making on the basis of a singular group. We have to diversify our strategy and apply our decisions, keeping in mind the unique nature of the different schools. Because of this, we propose making Asynchronous Wednesdays a site-wide issue. Aragon students like Caitlin, who spoke earlier, are largely in favor of Asynchronous Wednesdays, and a survey that we put out after the first Asynchronous Wednesday indicated that.
If Burlingame students and parents are not in favor, let's give them the opportunity to develop their own schedule. But this decision should not come at the expense of the mental health of thousands of other students at different school sites. I also want to point out that students feel isolated from mental health services, and it's crucial to bridge that gap during a pandemic when there's so much stress at home and given the circumstances of the outside world. According to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 35% of teenagers who were receiving mental health services did so exclusively through school. What are those 35% of students doing now when it's so much harder to connect to counselors? So we propose that counselors should conduct one-on-one outreach to students whose grades have taken a dip since last year. This will show students that, you know, we're looking out for you, we see you, even though we're in a virtual format, and your mental health is the #1 priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the District Teachers Association.
You would think I'd have zoomed down by now. Excuse me, I'm multitasking here. Good evening, President Griffin, members of the board, district cabinet. First, I want to commend the board for considering and hopefully approving the resolution in support of undocumented students. Every educator believes in principle that every student deserves an equal opportunity to succeed. Indeed, it is often said, paraphrasing Mann, that public education is the great equalizer. Approving the resolution in support of these diverse student populations that we serve and the path to citizenship is an important public statement and a reminder to the community that who we are and who we represent and what we do. That said, words are not deeds. We need to own our responsibility. We must act or continue to act in ways to fulfill the goals set forth in the resolution. I urge you to facilitate that action with public outreach, continued advocacy to government officials, and most importantly, a continued effort to support the ongoing development of a more inclusive and anti-racist culture in our district. On another note, this week is our 11th week in the purple tier. There's a lot to be positive about, however. The average daily case rate has been in a steady decline since January 8th high. Our test positivity rate has also dropped significantly. These are good trends and an indication that thoughtful collective action can have an impactful effect on stemming the tide of this pandemic. Make no mistake, we are nowhere near out of the woods. California just earned the honor of first among states in terms of COVID deaths. We'll have to wait and see whether or not the Super Bowl parties were super spreader events, and if ski weeks and spring breaks reveal that the public has succumbed to a lockdown fatigue. At this point, the variants and the vaccinations are in a race for control of the rest of 2021. There's no reason to let down our guard at this time. Our students and our community deserve it. That is why I am proud that the district and the association have come to a reasonable and safety conscious agreement, the MOU before you tonight, around the return to school parameters for spring semester. Trustee Dwyer, being an experienced attorney, has often said something to the effect of a good agreement often means that neither side is completely happy. And that's certainly true with this MOU. This agreement is the result of dozens of hours, sometimes contentious, negotiations. What is more important to me is that this agreement is the product of strong advocates from both parties that truly had the same goal in mind, the safety, health, and success of our students. Some might argue that the district is not moving fast enough or that the union is impeding the process. To those, I would simply say that you are not informed. It is in everyone's best interest to reopen as soon as possible, but only when it's safe. We owe it to you. Some would say that the schools are safe. The CDC says so. What the CDC actually said is that schools can open if safety measures and infection mitigations are already in place. Our district has just now begun testing the HVAC systems in all our buildings to assess whether or not they meet CDC guidelines. As mentioned in the presentation tonight, there are hundreds of different systems in many different buildings. As you may recall, we as an association have been asking for such assessments for nearly 12 months. Without this knowledge, there's no way that anyone can say that the schools are safe, quote, according to the CDC. One of our schools, BHS, has a building with no functioning HVAC at all, or limited at best, maybe only exhaust fans. That building represents approximately 50% of the classrooms on that campus. You may have also heard me mention the ventilation at BHS at previous meetings as well. In addition, I've mentioned before, the return to school has nothing to do with teachers feeling comfortable. In fact, I've spoken very vehemently about my concern about that narrative. On the contrary, it has to do with the relative safety of the environment. The fact of the matter is, despite what some uninformed observers might claim, the return to school is not based on comfort or feelings, but rather on actual safety. Safety for students, safety for teachers, and safety for the community. Some might say the union demands vaccines before returning, as if that would be considered some opportunistic delay tactic. We will not be shamed for advocating teacher vaccines in the interest of protecting students in the community for the return to school. I'm proud to say that our administration, that like most districts and the county office, are all advocating for immediate teacher vaccination to this end. Vaccinations are not part of our agreement because we do not control the rollout or the timing of those vaccinations. That argument that it is a delay tactic is a straw man. The good news is that the county is now planning to begin teacher vaccinations on February 22. More information to come later. This work is hard. It's hard because everyone wants to be back as soon as possible. We've been charged with an almost impossible task, developing a plan that will improve the student's experience and maintain the student learning and provide for everyone's safety in a constantly changing environment in a facility with unknown parameters related to air quality and logistics for entry and egress and hallway movement and bathrooms. This work is hard. It takes time. We now have a plan, or at least the beginnings of a plan. It's now up to the district to deliver the environment as required by the CDC, the CDPH, and local county health departments so that we can go back to school in a meaningful environment. Finally, as one of the student board members said, I would be remiss if not to mention that the environment that we're going to return to, or that students are going to return to, is nothing like what the environment might have been in February of 2020. Essentially, it will be Zoom in the room. And that's not because teachers are unwilling to engage in activities that are more meaningful or more desirable by students or families or parents or communities. The fact of the matter is we're in the middle of a pandemic. The safety requirements are what they are. The parameters upon which we'll return, are what they are. We'll have very limited opportunity to do anything different from what we are doing now and maintain the learning environment for the students who do not come into class. It's important that we make sure that everyone understands those parameters. Finally, I would just have to say that it's very important to understand that everyone here has the best interest in mind, the best interest for the students, the community, and the teachers involved. And I hope that we can move forward with a meaningful and productive discussion of how we can make site plans to get back to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the CSEA Chapter 519 representative. Good evening.
Good evening, President Griffin, members of the board, Dr. Skelly, and everyone here tonight. I'm going to start off with, we were unable to make last month's meeting, so Happy New Year. We trust everyone had a restful holiday. We are hopeful for 2021 and looking forward to the day we can all be together in person again. We would like to take a moment to reintroduce you to classified staff and who we are. We are your mental health therapists, instructional aides, accounting, college and career advisors, and our staff, just to name a few. During these challenging times, each of these positions and so many more have been stepping up, and we are proud of how strong our classified team is and the work they do. Now for some updates. Peninsula High School is now open to staff and they are starting to settle into their new spaces. Classified staff were there to facilitate this move, helping in a wide variety of ways. We appreciate all the hard work from our classified members who have been helping to get Peninsula High School set up and ready to open for staff and students. The health and office staff, maintenance and operation, IT, and more. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Skelly, for acknowledging the transportation department in one of your messages to all staff this week. Yes, as Dr. Black mentioned last month, some classified staff are being reassigned to different jobs, such as supervising student pods, reaching out and calling students and families, running site distribution days, and more. We expect the district will continue to reassign classified staff during this time as needed, rather than considering laying off any classified employees. As we plan to slowly accept groups of students back onto campuses, staff will need to return to their original work assignments, and there may be a need for additional support, which in turn will call for the hiring of temps or new staff. Thank you, Mr. Land. We too would love to ensure that enough masks of quality are available for staff, again, and especially for the special education instructional aides who work physically and closely with and for their students. As each site takes on their reopening plans, we would also like to ensure our members' perspectives and concerns are taken into consideration. We are seeing some classified members serve on the site return to school committees, which is encouraging, and we applaud those site admin teams. We are hopeful that each of our sites will maintain a constant and clear communication with their classified staff members and ensure they are also heard and point of views are taken into account. To that effect, we would like to express our desire that all classified members, whether at the school sites, district office, or elsewhere, are being properly trained and informed about site or school opening procedures and safety guidelines. We are excited for the coming months as we slowly transition and overcome these challenges, these challenging times together. Thank you, and you guys have a good evening.
Thank you. Report of the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Association. Is there a representative there?
I don't think so, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, we'll move on. L1, approval of resolution 2021-10 supporting undocumented students and their families.
This was an item that was at the board members asked that we bring this for consideration. It's here for your approval. There were a few changes made between first posting and second, and we appreciate the grammatical help on a few pieces, but we ask now that we submit it for your consideration.
Does the board have any comments or questions? Trustee?
Sorry.
Well, okay, Trustee Dwyer, since you put your hand up, the blue hand.
You're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Good.
Yes.
I want to thank the superintendent for taking my call and listening to my concerns about some of the wording and making the changes so quickly so that we could approve the resolution tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
I just want to say how important it is to have this resolution. A lot of our students in this district identify as people who are undocumented, and it, talk about mental health, PTSD, all of that. Our students really, they experience a lot of that coming to another country, learning the language, trying to learn the culture, and then being in places sometimes in this country where they're told you don't belong. So I'm really happy that we are a leader in this. It sets the precedence for other districts and other places to acknowledge people that are undocumented and just provide education, period. So I just want to say how proud I am of our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Land.
Just President Griffin, I just want to apologize for my blurting out and not listening to your waiting. So
That's okay, man. Don't worry.
all right, but I was excited about this presentation and this resolution, which is why I was so eager to talk. But I will say this, Mr. Childress, Craig did a great job of explaining why this is important. And one of the things that he mentioned was that it's not just words, that it needs to be our actions as well. And that's something that I want to reiterate as well to everyone here. I'm proud that we're doing this. I'm proud, like Leah said, that we are at the forefront. As part of the San Mateo School Boards Association, Dr. Skelly and I presented to the president, and hopefully that can be shared with the other school boards so that they would follow suit with what we're doing. So I'm very proud of this, and I'm glad that we're putting this and bringing this forth.
Okay. No other comments. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, absolutely yes. Didn't Trustee Land?
Absolutely yes.
Okay, Trustees Lees Dwyer.
Certainly, yes.
Okay. So we got two absolutelys and a certainty, certainly. Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
Okay, Anna, yes, and I'll vote aye. So the motion passes 5-0. Much appreciated, everybody's effort, so. L2, update on spring.
Mr. Griffin, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be out of order, but I did want to say that Sherry Deggy is here from the adult school. I think she fell out of the panelist position, but she is here and able to give a report.
Okay. You know, you were there for a second and then you went away, so welcome.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that I'm so proud to be part of a district that so proactively and lovingly supports the teachers and students in our community, as showcased by the three principals tonight in their passionate presentations. Thank you so much for what you're doing. You guys are terrific. Appreciation of diversity and striving for equity are also important at the adult school. 2 union members recently attended the CFT Adult Ed Committee, a statewide body working to promote the best possible adult education in California. One of the issues discussed was equity and adult education, and the winter issue of the Coalition on Adult Basic Education's journal was dedicated to racial equity and immigrant integration. It contained an article called California Adult Education's Commitment and Actions to Increase Equity, which is being forwarded to you. We are also excited to support the board's resolution in stepping out in front of support of our undocumented students and their pathway to citizenship. Thank you so much for all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, now we'll move on to the L2 update on spring semester reopening.
So I'm going to turn this item over to Dr. Black and other staff members who will do this. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this work. Mr. Childress made some comments about safety and those pieces. We take those responsibilities very, very seriously. We're proud of the fact that we have no known experiences of contributing to any spread in this community. In fact, I think our actions have and our proactive responses to cases where students and staff who were tested and under our aegis were then brought in and contributed to, and we did a lot of contact tracing, and those led to increased community health. And so this item is one that you've seen many, many times here. Some of the information we'll go through fairly quickly because you've reviewed it, but it foreshadows the event later on, item N3, in which, or N2, when we talk about the memorandum of understanding with our San Mateo Union High School District Teachers Association. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Black. We'll go through these slides fairly quickly with the understanding that you've already reviewed these as you've had the packets for several days.
Thank you, Dr. Skelly, members of the board. Tonight's presentation is an update to the site reopening plans that we presented at the last meeting. Since that meeting, the district's reached a tentative agreement with the Teachers Association on the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, covering the reopening of schools. The MOU requires board approval, which is later on tonight's agenda. I would like to thank the Teachers Association and their negotiations team for the many, many hours of collaboration that led to the tentative agreement. The MOU strikes a balance between many factors that tended to compete with one another. However, the one factor that wasn't compromised at all was safety. Safety for students and safety for staff. Next slide, please. This MOU anticipates a 3-phase process for the reopening of schools. Next slide. Thank you. Phase 1 begins with our specialized programs. These programs consist of a variety of courses. They're small courses and they're applied. The names of them are Applied Academic Curriculum, the Adult Transition Class, Autism, BASE, Hope, and KEY, which aren't acronyms. Our BASE is an acronym, Behavior Achievement Safe Environment, Hope and KEY, and TDS, which is the Therapeutic Day School. 5 of our 6 comprehensive high schools have at least one of these programs. And this phase would begin no earlier than 14 days after the county moves into the red tier and would comprise of less than 10% of the total school enrollment. Next slide. Phase 2. Phase 2 will usher in middle college, Peninsula High School, and our Bridge Newcomer program. Middle college and Bridge will be located at the adult school. Currently, the adult school is in distance learning through April. Therefore, there is ample room for these programs. Middle college will use 8 classrooms and Bridge 3 classrooms. And there will be sections of room vacant and available for the adult school if they begin again in May. Phase 2 includes enrichment programs at our high school sites that we anticipate will provide a wide spectrum of opportunities for students, including academically focused pods, such as science and math labs, and clubs like robotics and mock trial, and lots of activities such as music, dance, and drama instruction. Next slide. Peninsula High School is slated to begin their 3rd semester at their new location. And so when phase 2 begins, it will be at that new site. For phase 2 at Peninsula High School, teacher participation is voluntary. And the maximum number of students on any particular day will be 30 or less. But this will allow for all Peninsula High School students who choose to be on campus to be scheduled at least once a week for a full day or more times if the school breaks up the days. Next slide. Phase 3. Phase 3 opens for schools in a hybrid schedule. All students who opt in for in-person instruction will be scheduled to be on site at least 2 days a week. The district will send out a family survey as soon as the county moves into the red tier, where we will ask families to indicate if they would like on-site instruction in phase 3 or continue with distance learning. The number of students on each campus in phase 3 will be less than 30% of the total school enrollment. Next slide. This slide provides the format for phase 3 hybrid system. Current student schedules will remain the same for the most part. Instruction will continue to be via Zoom with the teacher and a portion of the students in the classroom. Students will be scheduled for most likely 2 days of in-person instruction per week. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Devaney, our student health coordinator.
Next slide, thanks. So we're going to review health screenings. Again, I know we've spoken about this a few times. Next slide. So we will continue to increase the number of checkpoints for health screenings as we continue to onboard students at the different phases on each campus. We will do a daily check in the morning, which includes temperature, as well as health questionnaire, which will also identify any potential exposures or COVID-related symptoms. Next slide. Also, something we've all talked about and are on our way developing is our student education and staff training so people feel safe and prepared when they are back on campus. Next slide. So our staff training and our student education, we're already developing a library of resources on how we will deliver this information both to students and staff, whether it will be live, screencasts, webinars. We have some social media, so things really geared towards students, as well as announcements, daily emails, and texts, as well as some other of our software on site. There will be some mandatory safety protocol training that will be provided to all
The
staff.
major flaw in the current opening plan is that phase 3 doesn't start until the county has entered into the orange tier.
I think someone
This
might
is the
need
major
to,
flaw as schools can't reopen in the red tier. Huh?
I think someone might need to mute, sorry.
I think Marina is practicing her speech and needs to, there we go. She's on mute.
Okay. So I think I was sharing about the mandatory safety protocol training. So we'll have some mandatory training in advance of staff being on campus, as well as when they return to campus, and then again for students as well. One of the big questions we get a lot of is how will staff and students be trained on if there's a positive case in their household or if they hear of a positive case. So we'll spend a lot of time sharing how and when and who they will report that to. Next slide, please.
Student behavior expectations. Next slide, please. Student safety is student staff safety is our #1 priority. Students and staff will be provided safety training, and students are expected to comport themselves in line with behavioral expectations. In terms of student behavior while attending in-person activities, our experience this year with learning pods, athletics, and testing has been excellent. Students have been conscientious, careful, they've followed the safety rules, and we expect that will continue. Student Services with Director Don Scatena has developed the link document on the slide that provides detailed responses that will be followed in the event that a student isn't following the safety protocols. Next, I'm going to turn this to our Director of Technology, Simon Bettis. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. The technology department, with the assistance from the district instructional tech coordinators, teachers, and TOSAs, have been meeting to discuss and test technologies that could potentially assist teachers when we return to school. So the goal here is to see what we can do to improve teachers' current classroom tech setup, and obviously to support the district's hybrid teaching environment, in which some students will be in person and at the same time their peers would access their classes remotely through Zoom. Our thought process here is that we know our teachers are Zooming now, and they do this very well. So how or what can we improve, or what can we do to improve their current technologies, at the same time be flexible enough to tweak their classroom setup to cater to various teaching methods and style. So once the tech department felt like we had a solid working combination of equipment, we then tested this equipment with several teachers across the districts who were willing to come in to teach and to get their feedback. So thus far, the feedback has been really positive. The biggest issue that we've encountered was when we live stream in a hybrid classroom is the sound issue. There were slight sound delays, echoing effect due to open mics and background noises. And fortunately, we were able to significantly reduce these issues by providing teachers with headsets that has a built-in noise canceling microphone. And it is recommended that in-person students wear earphones when in class. We do acknowledge that our current internet bandwidth may not be adequate to support thousands of simultaneous Zoom sessions. Therefore, by the end of this month, we will double our current internet capacity to 10 gigabits per second. To that end, based on our teacher mockups, the following classroom upgrades is what we recommend. 27-inch monitor as a secondary screen so that teachers can clearly view Zoom participants and allow teachers to multitask. wireless headset with noise canceling microphones to reduce background noise, USB dock cam for presentation purposes, docking station to connect additional peripherals, and an optional external Logitech wide-angle cameras for teachers who needs one due to their teaching environment. As you can see, these tools are not game changer, but I do believe that these upgrades could help our teachers manage their hybrid classrooms much more efficiently. Thank you.
Next slide, Sarah.
So we'll briefly talk about our return to campus protocols. Next slide. So just for context, we've reviewed this a few times, but a positive case is in the red, a close contact is in the yellow, and then indirect contact is in the green. Next slide. So how do we currently learn about cases, those contacts, or indirect contacts can also be considered an exposure? Currently, our Live Safe app in the morning, when folks are coming to campus, we're getting those at-risk emails. We're following up with folks who have some symptoms of COVID or have had an exposure. We also learn from staff disclosing, whether they disclose directly to the health team or they disclose to their admin team, who then share with the COVID response. And then we are identifying as well to our COVID testing, although we've been on a streak so far in the last 2 weeks, we haven't had a positive, quite dramatically increased our testing with the addition of pods and athletes on site. And then students and families, they're disclosing, so that's how we're learning about our cases. Next slide. So once we learn about them, what do? If we end up having a positive case, we gather additional information, we track that information, and we confirm that information. Once we have everything we need to be able to consult with the health department, we reach out with them for direction on what happens next. I think I've mentioned before that we have a great public health liaison. I hear from her almost immediately when we have a need. And then we initiate our COVID communication plan, which is in our reopening site plans. And then once we get the direction from the health department, we've internally communicated, we have identified students or staff on campus. If there was a positive case on campus, then we begin disseminating notifications to those identified, whether they're identified as a close contact, an indirect contact, and there's different notifications that come directly from the health department, and then we send out to staff and students. And then we send them via email, text, or some of our Aries communication. Next slide. This is a really simplified overview of estimates on return based on the different case, close contact, or an indirect contact. So if we have a positive case, there's a medical isolation required for that person to stay home and isolated for about 10 days. And that starts, if there are symptoms, about 48 hours before symptoms started. And then if there's a positive case and they're asymptomatic or no symptoms, it's 10 days from the test date, not to the results of the actual swab. And with our close contacts, if there is a negative test, but they're identified as a close contact, they still have to quarantine for 14 days. And at this point, you can't test out of quarantine. I know there have been some different guidances released from the CDC as well as the California Department of Public Health. We also have our guidance from San Mateo County Office of Ed. So we are constantly looking at these. We are under San Mateo County, and so they haven't changed their guidance at this point. So we still require 14 days of quarantine. I know that's a question we're getting a lot on why we haven't reduced that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we have to follow what the county shares and gives us that direction. So at this point, it is 14 days for quarantine. And then the one that is really tricky and can be the lengthiest is if you're in a household and unable to isolate within your household. If you test negative and there is a positive case in your household, your quarantine doesn't start until their 10 days of isolation ends. So it can be really lengthy, up to 25 days, and we have had that a few times. And then again, this is just a simplified estimate. It is very specific, which is why we work so closely with the health department to guide this direction. And then we help clear and return each case or close contact by a phone call or email, confirming that they are clear to return before they come back on campus. And then the indirect contact, they would receive a self-observe or monitor for symptoms, but they don't have to change their actions. They can continue to do live normal life and just be aware that there was a potential they may have come in contact with someone but is not confirmed. So that's different than the close contact where we know they were within close proximity for a certain period of time. Next slide.
Thank you, Sarah. Next for our ventilation system will be Linda Carlton, our Director of Maintenance Operations and Facility Use.
Okay, and we will be reviewing the ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force recommendations. Next slide, please. So ASHRAE stands for American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, and it's recognized for ventilation design in the industry. They recommend guidance for COVID-19 from air exchanges, cleaning, distribution, and system operations. The guidance issued is based on flexible deployment of HVAC systems to reduce COVID-19. Next slide, please. So as it was stated earlier, the district does have hundreds of various HVAC systems, all types, shapes, sizes. The overwhelming majority of these systems were installed within the last 20 years and designed to supply code required air exchanges. This past summer in July, the district contracted with Costa Mechanical Engineers, and they verified that our systems were capable of handling the MERV 13 filters. These filters were upgraded in August, and then in November and December, our maintenance and ops team performed testing to verify that our systems were still performing to design criteria. We will be replacing these filters regularly. Our next change out will be here in the end of February, beginning in March. We're currently preparing checklists to ensure that all the spaces are compliant with ASHRAE, and the systems that do not meet code or cannot accommodate MERV 13 filtration will be retrofitted or equipped with supplemental air cleaners. Next slide, please. To date, our investigation and testing basically has revealed that we have very, very small number of classrooms that are not going to currently meet the required minimum outdoor airflow rates for ventilation. And we're currently working on solutions to increase the ventilation rates in those rooms. We'll use a combination of filters and air cleaners to achieve MERV 13 or better levels. And to the best of our knowledge, every HVAC system that has a filtration has been fitted with MERV 13 filters, and we are currently verifying 100% compliance on that. Next screen. We're also raising our variable air volume, VAV systems above the minimum by 30 to 40%. We will also be opening our air dampers to a minimum of 30%. We do have some air dampers that are currently open to 100%. And in order to meet the 2-hour pre-occupancy and 2-hour post-occupancy purge, we will start all of our systems by 6 a.m. and run them at least until 6 p.m. And where possible, we will program our systems to purge spaces with 100% outside air between classes. Next screen, please. Spaces that have exhaust systems or passive systems will be addressed either with a combination of air cleaners, capable of MERV 13 and increased air circulation. And we'll only use air cleaners which evidence of effectiveness and safety is clear. And all proposed solutions will promote mixing without causing strong air currents that increase direct transmission for person to person. Next.
Thank you, Linda. So before we get to comments and feedback, all the site plans are attached to this agenda item. If the MOU is approved later today, we will contact the county, inform them that we're going to upload the site plans onto our website, and then we expect the county to go through our plans and either give us feedback or approve them. So we're open for any comments and feedback the board may have.
Before we get to board comments, I understand there's some speakers on this item. Is that correct, Ms. Chalkley?
That is correct. We have a number of speakers. So why don't I announce the first 3, if that's okay? They've all been promoted. Mr. Griffin, did you want to have public speakers before the board?
Yes.
Okay, so first we have Marina von Blumestein, then we have Christy Knott, then we have Laura McDonald. So those are our first three. And then we have Allison Libertori and Ann Pesky. And I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing your name, so I apologize. So those are our public speakers. So Ms. Blumestein, von Blumestein.
Hi, I'm Marina van Blomestein, and good evening, everyone. I apologize. Apparently, my mic got off mute a bit ago, so I do apologize for that. I do see that there is a major problem or a major flaw with the current proposed opening plan, and that is that in phase 3, we are not intending to open phase 3 until the county has entered the orange tier. This is a major flaw, as schools can reopen in the red tier. In addition to that, it seems that in that phase 3, we're proposing that we open it and only at 30% capacity. So I'm going to cite a couple of references, and I gave this information to the board via an email, but I want the public to be aware also. And I'm not going to cite every single thing, but just the relevant items. According to the COVID-19 California Safer Economy website, quote, schools may not reopen fully for in-person instruction until the county has been in the red tier for 5 days. End quote. There's more to that, but that's the part that's relevant. If I recall, just a few minutes ago, we said that we would open in phase 1 when we were in red after being in red for 14 days. Why are we waiting? According to the COVID-19 Consolidated Schools Guidance PDF file, quote, criteria to reopen for in-school instruction, red, orange, and yellow tiers consistent with the July 17 framework, schools may reopen at all grades if they are located in the counties of red, orange, or yellow tiers under the blueprint for a safer economy, end quote. According to the quick guide, what Californians color-coded county tracking system means for schools, quote, question, if a school opens while the county is in red, then the county moves back up to purple, does the school have to close? Answer, no, end quote. So if we have all the guidelines telling us we can reopen in the red tier, what is the excuse for not opening in the red tier? The current guideline is clear that even if we open in the red tier, and we can remain open even if we move back to the purple tier. As I mentioned in the last meeting, several private high schools are open. Yesterday, I provided the board with a list of several high schools in our area which are open. Several have been open since October, and several are currently operating at 50% capacity. As a concerned parent, and on behalf of many concerned parents that want our high school students back in school, I strongly urge the board to amend the proposed plan so that phase 3 can start once we are in the red tier. The red tier, not the orange tier. Your job is to get our students into school, and other local schools have successfully done this. Our kids' mental health and learning is—
Ma'am, your time is up. Can you wrap up, please?
There's no logical reason that we cannot open in the red tier. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next, we have Christy Knott, please.
Hi, my name is Christy Knott, and I'm a parent of a 9th grader at Hillsdale. I'm also an educator, though not currently an educator in the district, but I have been. First, I want to thank the board and the administration and all the teachers for all the hard work that they have put into this entire year, and especially into the work and thinking about how to safely reopen in a way that works best for everyone. I am especially grateful that the students and the families have an option to choose distance learning and stay in that for the entire semester, as that is what I will be choosing for my son. I appreciate the care in attempting to provide that same option for teachers. I know that's complicated, but I appreciate and very much hope that we are giving teachers the choice about whether or not to come back based on their individual situations. I'm very excited about the idea of when students do come back, that the schedules will stay the same for students and for teachers, and that we will be integrating Zoom, students Zooming into the room as well as students who are in the room. I feel like that protects everything that the teachers have worked so hard to build in their classrooms, the community, and the students, what they feel and how they're experiencing school, as challenging as it is in distance learning, to be able to retain that classroom, that schedule, and those same teachers throughout, even if some of the students choose to go back. So thank you for that. I also very much appreciate how slowly we are easing into this, kind of opposite of what the last speaker spoke of. I feel like that is most respectful to both the educators, to have them be able to design and implement and make changes to be able to be the most effective they can as they eventually get back into the classroom when that's safe for everyone. Last comment is that I just want to advocate for and support ASB students' desire to have asynchronous Wednesdays. It's something that I've mentioned previously on these board meetings. I feel really strongly both for the students and for the staff, the teachers, to have that break, especially if we're going back to school, to be able to have that Wednesday to sort of regroup, catch their breath, do work still, absolutely, but just do that in a slightly different way. Everything that I've seen from other schools that I'm directly involved with, it is a huge help, and it just really helps ease the stress for everyone. Thank you again for all your work, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Next, we have Laura McDonald.
Thank you. Good evening. I feel I should play Tom Petty's song Won't Back Down in the background, as I'm certain some folks are tired of seeing my name lately. I will not back down until our district brings our kids back into the classroom as soon as state and county conditions allow. I love my children and I admire and respect their teachers. That's why I'm here tonight. We object to the current MOU that specifies that all students who opt for in-person learning can return only in phase 3 and only if the county is in the orange tier. The multiple conditions in the MOU make it extremely unlikely that the children that want to return to the classroom will return there this semester. Meanwhile, there are serious confirmed mental health issues, including eating disorders and depression, that are materially impacting our children. Everyone who cares, and that should be literally everyone, parents, teachers, administrators, and even students, they need to understand the severity and density of these issues. There are many already impacted families in this community that we know, and there are probably many more we don't know about. It's distressed these families, and it brings my family to tears. Dr. Skelly said it's very hard to track the data around the mental health issues of students. We recognize this, but this is too important an issue to not address it because it is hard. We should be taking steps as a district to look into those issues. An example would be maybe to analyze how many 504s have been created for students in our district since the outset of the pandemic and compare those numbers to how many 504s existed pre-pandemic. Some people say that mental health can be managed, but that the virus kills. That's simply not true by published facts by experts. Children die from eating disorders. Children die by suicide due to depression. Clark County, Nevada lost 19 children to suicide during this pandemic, and their superintendent's response was to reopen the schools. I've not addressed the increase in education disparity from the pandemic. I'm certain that teachers are concerned about their ability to monitor all these issues in their students in remote learning. This week, the Palo Alto School District announced that they will reopen their middle and high schools in the red tier. If they can do it, we can and should as well. Our district should reassure our teachers that we can do this safely now. I'd like to offer suggestions. Ask all families to quarantine and test their children prior to coming back to the classroom. Have students and families sign a compact specifying safety requirements of protecting themselves, fellow students, and school staff. Consider the mountain of evidence that middle and high schools can operate safely by following these protocols: masking, hand sanitizing, and social distancing. Numerous studies have been reported by the CDC in pediatrics, in the New England Journal of Medicine. They all cite extremely low transmission rates in schools and as compared to the community spread, even in schools that do not use strict safety protocols. The most quantitative evidence is that the positivity rate for both students and teachers is typically in the 0.1 to 0.3% range versus the surrounding total community where positivity rates are in the 3 to 5% range. So it's safer for students and teachers to be in school by a factor of 10 to 50x. We want our children to return to school while the county is still in the red tier and no later than March 1st. Please consider a path to get them there in an expedited way and revise the current MOU. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, any more speakers, Ms. Chalkley?
We have two more. Next is Allison Liberatori, and then we have Ann Pesky.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here tonight to express my concern about both the quality of the indoor air in our classrooms and the quality of the instruction that the hybrid live streaming model presents. I've been teaching in the Burlingame High School A building since its renovation in 2006. Since that time, teachers have complained about the stifling heat and what feels like stagnant air in these classrooms. This has gotten worse over time as temperatures rise and the HVAC has aged. In October of 2019, some of us purchased room thermometers. We recorded multiple days where temperatures in the classroom ranged from 79 to 81 degrees. If that doesn't seem too bad to you, ask yourself the last time you set a thermostat in your home or office to 80 degrees and left it there all day while you worked. It is so uncomfortable that we had 2 students pass out in our classrooms that year. For the rest of us, productivity and focus is a challenge. Opening windows on our campus, which is what is required in order to be COVID safe in these rooms, poses some particular challenges. Those of you who had the opportunity to join us for outdoor graduation ceremonies know that when the train goes by, the speakers must pause as they cannot be heard. My classroom windows face that train. That train runs all day. Additionally, the PE classes are right outside our windows, as are the lawnmowers, which add to the cacophony. Some classrooms will need to be fitted with air purifiers, which run at a decibel level of 50. This is roughly the equivalent of a hairdryer running in the room all day. Add to that a COVID face mask and half of our classes on Zoom, and now it is bordering on absurd. Of course, today, the health risks of a poorly functioning HVAC are our biggest concern. We were recently informed that the HVAC retrofit will not happen until the summer of 2022. We were also told by former district deputy superintendent Liz McManus that the Burlingame High School A building classrooms would not be used in a school reopening plan for this school year due to HVAC concerns. From what we are hearing now, the A building is part of the reopening plan, and I am here today to ask you to reconsider. Those of us who teach in that building are extremely concerned about what the hybrid model means for our safety and for the quality of instruction we will be able to provide for our students. There are ways to bring students together for the socialization that they need, but bringing them back into these classrooms for instruction under these circumstances makes little sense. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Anne, please.
Hi, my name is Anne Pesquier. I'm the computer science teacher at Hillsdale, and I also teach in SMUHSD. So I have one comment about the MOU. I learned that the vaccine is not part of the agreement because at the time of the draft, it was not in the picture yet. So my question for you board members, why can't we add the vaccine into the agreement now? Now, a few comments about the return to school draft that was communicated to teachers this week. I'm here to tell you that personally, I refuse to take the risk to bring back the virus to my kids, my husband, and to put my health at risk. This is not an option for me, for multiple reasons. First, even if the numbers are down, variants viruses are in the Bay Area, and the trend can be reversed since those variants increase by 35% the infection rate. It's been 11 months or 10 months that we are waiting for a good solution to be able to come back in person at school. The solution is almost there, but instead of taking the safe route, districts are deciding to go against scientific facts. Those facts are that when you are mixing people in an enclosed space for a long time, more than 15 minutes, even with masks, infection happen. Also, we are right now at 2/3 within our school year, changing schedule with Monday, Tuesday with some students, Thursday, Friday, other students, and changing the way we work together will only be disruptive for teachers and students and won't help students at risk. Finally, if we go back to school, teachers and students will be asked to do the same work that we are doing now, but in worse condition. Okay, we'll have mask on, plexiglass barrier in front of the teacher, but more important, there will be no group work for students in class. The whiteboard might not be seen by the student in class because of the laptop equipment in front. There will be no communication between the group of students in class and the group of students at home. There will be delays in sharing documents between the in-person group and the remote group and the teacher. Eventually, what will happen is the student in class will jump back on Zoom to be able to communicate with the rest of the class. And basically, we'll have the same Zoom class, but 1/3 of the student in class mask on, taking the risk, and 2/3 of the student at home. I ask you to reconsider this return to school draft so it can be more aligned to benefit the student. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it for public comment?
That is it indeed.
Okay, we'll open it up for board comment. Board wish to comment? Anyone on the board wish to comment? Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
I want to say thank you for everybody that made comments today, and all of the letters that we've gotten. I've read all of them, and I appreciate the communication. I just wanted to address something though that it just doesn't sit well with me. Just some of the messages are really disrespectful in the language that's used towards us and towards our community. I just want to make sure that we remain respectful because that's what we call our students to do. And I don't think the message comes across as effectively when it's in a disrespectful manner. I think all of us work really hard and we all have the same intention to get our kids on campus, to help our students, to be supportive of them. But it doesn't come across effectively when there's language used that's extremely, extremely disrespectful. I have colleagues in other districts that have had death threats, that have been followed, that have had their families threatened, and it's just ridiculous. It hasn't happened here yet, but I just hope it doesn't get to that point. But I just really wanted to address that because of the effectiveness of how we communicate with each other. But like I said, thank you for everyone that's reached out to us. We've read your emails, we've read your messages. You're being heard. And for those of you that have addressed us respectfully, I'm grateful. Whether we agree or not, it doesn't matter. That respect was there, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Trustee Land.
Thank you, President Griffin. I'm going to restrict my comments not to the MOU. The only thing I'm going to say is I'm going to repeat what Mr. Childress said, which is no one's happy with this agreement. Maybe that's what makes it a compromise and making it a worthwhile agreement, but I'll discuss that later. I do want to comment on the the speakers. Thank you very much for your opinions. And I will address that when we get to the MOU part. What I do have is a few questions and comments about what was going on in the presentation and see if I can push this forward. First, I want to compliment facilities. Linda, thank you very much for the presentation and the thoroughness of it. I think to try to really think about it, it seems like most of the facilities are ready, but there are some, like Burlingame Building A, that are of concern. So I would love to know a little bit more about the data, maybe not now, but in the future, of how we're going to address it and how we're going to be able to solve that problem, because I do hear what the teacher was speaking, Allison was talking about. So I would like to know a little bit more about that, or figure out how we can work around it. Sarah, with the testing, you didn't go into detail about what kind of testing we could be able to do with students coming back on campus. My background is there for a reason, because we are using pool testing, and I'm wondering if that's a possibility that we can explore, really to help classes really know who's, if the classes are safe weekly, and how we can keep doing that and bring them back in a safe manner and test them voluntarily, but it really helps the whole class. And I think that's important for the cohorts. I want to give compliment to Simon. Simon, amazing presentation for the tech. I really appreciate how you did this and worked with the teachers to be able to make this work. I think it's important to be able to figure out how to get kids in the classroom, working with the teachers, but having access to Zoom as well and have that communication, like you said. I think that's going to be very difficult, but I love how you guys are planning and making for it. I applaud the district for this investment, because I think it's an investment that's going to be a lot longer than just this year, to be honest, and sad but true. I also wanted to commend the principals and the school plans. I think they're very practical. I think they're very safe, and they're practicing all the 4 pillars and how we need to get back on campus. And it really shows us that how we can make it happen. So thank you very much for that. I will advocate for our student representatives who talk about asynchronous days. I think we do need to incorporate that. We do study hall now, and that's one of the things we do, what we did before this happened, and that's what they're really trying to push for. They're trying to push for a time where they can work on their own and be independent, but also provide time where they can meet with their teachers in office hours. I think it's a practical solution. I think it's something that needs to happen, and I would like to lend my voice to promoting that. I love to have those the student voices, and I think it's important that they are heard. So thank you.
Trustee Hanley.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to compliment the presentation. I thought it was very well done, and I thought the technology part of the presentation was also very well done. We've obviously put a lot of effort and thought into how we can make this a practical, viable solution, because it's not going to be easy to actually bring this off. But I thought that was very impressive. I went through a number of the school plans, and I thought they were very thorough. So I was very pleased with those, and I'll reserve my comments also when we get to the MOU. I thank the speakers for coming forward. This is a huge lift. We're in very, very, very tough times, and it's a huge lift that we're trying to pull off here. But I'll reserve my comments on the MOU when we get to the MOU topic.
Trustee Dwyer. Unmute yourself.
That makes it even more brief. I agree with everything my fellow trustees have said, and I want to thank Sarah and Simon and Linda particularly for working so hard, because in addition to all your normal duties, you're putting together a presentation for us, telling us about all the extra things that you're doing. And I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Is that your comment? Okay. I have a question. Actually, I have a couple of questions, and they were good presentations. The technology, everything else kind of looked like it was not particularly, well, it's all onerous, but the technology looked like it was fairly expensive. Do we have any idea what kind of dollars we're talking about? And is that in some of this emergency free money we're getting from out of the sky? Simon?
Yes. So the funding that we plan to use would be out of the CARES fund, and we were allocated the budget was up to $2,000 per classroom. However, we obviously want to minimize the cost. If we talk to our vendors, they're prepared to offer us this $10,000 solution. Obviously, we don't want to go there. We want to use peripherals that actually works, that's with a low learning curve, if any. And the equipment that we chose, it's less than $1,000, I think, ETA.
What's going to happen is going to be shortages. There's already shortages of a lot of equipment.
Right.
And price is going to be, the availability is going to be number one, and the price is going to be number two. And it's a tough thing because we're trying to fill a need, but it's going to be really difficult to buy all that equipment, source it, deliver it, set it up, etc. So that was one question. The other is a comment, and I think everybody here has made a plan. And like your summer vacation, you plan all year for that summer vacation. And, you start day one of the summer vacation. What happens to the plan? You throw it out the window and you start adjusting on the fly, and something's not available. Disneyland, we can't get those tickets, so we got to go over here to some other amusement park, etc. And you've got to wing it. And I hope that we've got an MOU. So we've got some borders or some constraints that we've put in place. But I would like to think that as things develop and things move around within either the constraints or the MOU, we're not going to sit there if we see other places are able to move faster. And Lord knows we've been moving slow for a while, that we can't move fast, or we can't change some of this plan to bring more students back faster if we really think it's safe, if we can get the MOU changed around. Some stuff may work, and it may work really good, and we need to capitalize on that. And some stuff may not be that successful, like this technology bug. So, do we think this has any flexibility in it?
I'll just say that we're committed to working on, everybody shares the same goal. And I think that if there are ways that we can do this better, we're open to it. And I think our teachers have shown that consistently.
I think I'd rather kind of maybe go slow and deliver early rather than make all kind of promises that we have a really tough time delivering. But I know we want to do it just as quick as we can. Lord knows we do. So is there any other comments from or questions from the board? And I think, the other comment on vaccinations, I think vaccinations for the teachers, we ought to just, for all our employees. If we got any pull, any power, we ought to offer them to everybody who wants one, period.
So we're working on that topic right now. As the board knows, there's a chance that we'll, and Mr. Childress mentioned, there's a chance that we'll start getting vaccinations for educators on February 22nd. It would be our intention to not have any, our standard would be closeness to students and closeness to contact here, and expectations in terms of coming in. And we're working on that plan right now. We're very excited about that. As was mentioned, this MOU was done absent vaccines, but that'll certainly, I think, certainly make me feel better if I'm vaccinated coming to work and the like. So I think there are a couple of questions that were asked here that we will come back for answers next time, unless there's a particular, I think I would rather, since some of the, I'm not sure how prepared folks are to answer them now. So on the 25th, we'll come back with another return to school report and provide some information. Then we'll also have another health update and a vaccine update.
Dr. Scully, thank you. I think that's fine with the answers that I asked and a few others did. And I think, Mr. Griffith, the word is pivot. That's the new COVID word for what's going on these days in education. I'm sick of the word, but it's pivot.
Yeah, we pivot. I pivot all the time. I pivot so much I'm dizzy from pivoting. Okay, if there's nothing else, no other further comments on this item, let's move on to L3.
So I think Mr. Scatena needs to be promoted here to panelist. This is a report the board receives every meeting. I imagine you've had a chance, or every year, I imagine you've had a chance to look this over. We'll try to go through this quickly because we are anxious to get to the MOU and some other items that we have on the board agenda. So Mr. Scatena, I'm going to turn this over, but I will go through it quickly and then we'll answer any questions that you have.
Sounds good. Let's see. As you know, we put these recommendations every year around February, just prior to enrollment and setting capacities for us to have our lottery and to do student placement. So next slide. We work with Decision Insight, which is our company that does our projections. Probably the key component, it's amazingly, it's pretty accurate. It does show you long-term trend data that is very helpful. You can see our trend data that is happening over the next 10 years. Most importantly is looking at the graduates over the incoming students. So senior graduates this year of 2484, just about, and an incoming class of 2344 shows that we're potentially down 140 students. That will materialize throughout these projections. You can see that the numbers are a little higher year over year. We don't know if those numbers are going to materialize year over year, and we'll talk about some of the reasons for that. But you can see about a 1 to 1.5% increase from 2020 to 2021 fall. Next slide. Some of the key points to point out, we were looking at just a slight increase from the previous year, but the recommendation is is to just slightly decrease our staffing because our staffing right now will easily be able to take the capacity that we expect for next year. So we have seen that this year we did have ample space, and that's probably a result of what has happened in our community with COVID and enrollments. We have not seen as many walk-ins that we would normally see in a year. And there's also just a lot of unknowns about our verified enrollments for next year. So we're recommending a very conservative approach to our staffing and capacities for next year. Looking at we're in this sort of apex or high water mark of enrollments, which started around 2019. Looks like we were probably right in the middle of the peak, and will start slightly decreasing over the next many years in a gradual approach, not a huge drop off at any point. Next slide. This is probably the slide that gives you the most information. I just want to go over it quickly. You can see on the far left here, the schools and our current adopted capacity from last year. The next column shows you our current enrollment from about 3 weeks ago, but it gives you a ballpark idea that our numbers are pretty accurate. Sometimes you will see enrollments that are above capacity. Normally that is very possible, and because of either specific programs that are funded and or the ability to build a master schedule. It doesn't take into account students taking things like community college classes, dual enrollment, things of that nature too, and independent study. You can see in the middle that there are, those are enrollment numbers with our current verified enrollment numbers. On the far right, you can see our recommendations. There is an error here. Under Cappuccino, it's showing in red. Red should be for any increases. And it's actually should be San Mateo High School that's having an increase. Cappuccino is going to be a decrease. So Cappuccino will be a decrease from 1120 to 1085 as a recommended capacity. And San Mateo will be a 20 student increase to 1685. Next slide. This is always a slide of interest to the board. This shows our 8th grade rising freshmen, incoming freshmen, and their requests. This is as of yesterday, and these are the requests for transfer. To go over what you're seeing here, you can see requests. The most requested school is still Aragon with 198 requests for transfer into Aragon. And 111 of those are coming from San Mateo. And you can see on the bottom are the requests in. On the far right is the grand total of the requests out of the schools. I will sit here for a second so you can see match up the colors of the schools so you can see what the difference between the requests between the two different schools are. Next slide. So our recommendations, again, I mentioned we are going to use a conservative model for enrollment projections. And if we see that our verified enrollment increases and those numbers well exceed our staffing capacity, then we will make adjustments up for our site principals and their teams. We are recommending a slight decrease, though, in capacity from 8,800 to 8,770, so a 30 student decrease. We are seeing increased capacities at both Burlingame and San Mateo, and decreases at Cappuccino and Hillsdale, and then unchanged capacities at Aragon, Mills, and Peninsula. The recommendation is to allow, per board policy, to have the lottery February 18th, allow for 15 spots per site, and allow for one-to-one transfers up to those, allow for transfers up to the capacity, and then allow for one-to-one transfers after we are up to each site's capacity. In addition, recommendation is for all upperclassmen who make requests for transfer to be approved. Next slide. Some things to consider based on some of the decision insight data. Stable enrollment with slight annual decreases over the next 5 to 6 years. You can see that in the percentage change. With lots of discussions with the Hillsdale administration about adjusting their house capacity. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we started talking about a 420, 410 student capacity for incoming students. But if you saw the long-term data, it shows that the numbers will be very difficult to meet at a 410 or 420 number. 360 seems far more reasonable and still allows for transfers and school choice in, as some students will opt to come out of Hillsdale. One other area is the significant number of the decrease of 8% over the last 2 years. That is sort of the most that Cappuccino will have, is that 8% decrease, is this 2-year period. it will just be slight decreases, or it'll be it will plateau until about 2028. And then you'll start seeing again some significant decreases there. But I think last year when we showed those numbers about Cappuccino, most of the numbers were below 1,000. And so you could see that only 1 year on that 10-year trend is showing now below 1,000. Finally, just overall, 2028 to 30 projects most schools to have decreases in enrollment. But I've found in my position that projecting 8 and 10 years out, it isn't always the best rule of thumb. And but if you look, it does show some significant decreases, especially in the southern part of the district, where we've seen this large number of increases over the last several years. Burlingame High School shows that it will be mostly unchanged over the next 10 years. Next slide. And I can take any questions from the board.
Okay, does board have any questions? Can you would you take the presentation down?
So just to be clear, we're looking for approval on this tonight.
Okay, Trustee Hanley.
Yeah, what I'm interested in is that I understand that we need to make adjustments for your staffing planning and that sort of thing, but I want to make sure that in making those adjustments, we're not cutting off, our our intra-district school choice program, and for instance at Hillsdale, in reducing the capacity there, we're not cutting off the ability of families to choose Hillsdale High School if they want to go to Hillsdale High School. I understand that at Aragon we actually do have a capacity cap issue there, but I want to make sure that to the extent possible, people are still able to choose Aragon until we meet that cap at Aragon. So my interest is to maintain our school choice program as a vigorous school choice program in the district while we're making these adjustments to staffing. So I want to be reassured that these changes still allow that program to operate.
Yeah, for the last 5 years, we've exceeded 90% actually exceeded 90% of requests getting their school of choice. And so I think we will be right around that number again. Oftentimes, the students who are not getting their choice are the students requesting out of San Mateo and into Aragon. And we purposely did not allow every student to go this year because of the large freshman class at Aragon that would have resulted.
Yeah.
It would have well exceeded 500 students.
Trustee Land.
So Don, thanks for the presentation. Always very efficient and effective. My one question is very similar with Hillsdale. Is Hillsdale capacity kind of, I could look back, but I just don't want to see that decrease too much either. That is a concern of mine as well. Not just school of choices, but Hillsdale in particular. The other question I have is, it always has been a decrease in the northern part of our district, but now you're saying the southern part of the district is also going to experience a decrease. Is that correct?
I mean, these projections are saying 8 to 10 years out.
Okay.
Start seeing a decrease. And that's probably numbers that we're seeing play out in incoming kindergarten numbers. I mean, that's where you have to look.
Okay. And then the Hillsdale question?
Yeah, so if you look at the slide, I always highlight the blue. It's sort of a T. Those numbers, you got a 94 requests and 79 requests. that's a really good place to be. Just as many people want in as want out. And so that's a good spot. We could almost always assure anyone that they're going to get the school they want. And so that, that's pretty helpful. When you see those numbers, it's really helpful. I do predict that we'll be over 90% with these transfer requests we see here.
Thank you.
Could I just follow up with one quick one? As I recall last year, Cappuccino, it looked like the numbers changed somewhat for Cappuccino's projections, that they weren't, as I recall last year, the numbers were falling more dramatically than they appear to be falling this year. So can you refresh my memory? Did the numbers change somewhat? I mean, they're falling towards 2029 and 2030, but it seemed to me that they were falling earlier in last year's projections.
That's correct. I thought I might have said that in the presentation, I thought, but if we looked at the Decision Insight from 2 years ago, I think they would have shown Cappuccino with a subtotal probably below 1,000 students, about 5 or 6, 7 years out. And you can see now they actually don't project Cappuccino to have under 1,000 until 2030. And that's a lot can change between now and then, housing and shifts and boundaries and things of that nature. That's a number. 2030 is difficult because you're talking about students that aren't even.
Yeah, that's a long time away.
So the Decision Insight used birth rates and things like that also as a factor, but I think it's best to look at these for 5 to 6 years out.
Trustees Lees, Dwyer.
I just wanted to make a comment on the Hillsdale comment. Excuse me. I have a preschool cough. I spent the weekend with a preschooler who brought me his cough. So I just want to comment on Hillsdale because I think we have to be careful to recognize that Hillsdale is Hillsdale because of the houses, because of the small learning communities. And we need to honor and respect that because that's why people want to go there. So in order to keep that model and allow them to deliver the education that they have a reputation for delivering, we need to respect the numbers that they feel make the most sense on their site. So, and that's all I have to say with my 2-year-old preschool cough.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? We're being asked to approve the.
Ms. Zuniga has a comment, I
I
believe.
have a quick question.
Okay.
I just wanted to know what the schools with like that, like Hillsdale and Cappuccino, what have they said in terms of the interdistrict transfers? Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
What are they saying in regards to interdistrict? Interdistrict? Yeah. So I mean, I usually because of the house system, I do work closely with Jeff, with Mr. Gilbert and Ms. Milton on their. You know, I present this data to all the principals, and we have a short sit down, and I especially always do it with Hillsdale because they're unique because they really can't go over a certain number because of the house. And so when you say, if let's say we had 20 families move in, but Hillsdale's already at their house capacity, we have to offer them one of the other schools potentially if they can't take any more. That has never happened since I've been in the district in this role in 6 years, but it's a possibility. So, but I think the approach with the looking at 360 as a number, if you look long term, I think that's the right number. I think 3 years ago, we thought Hillsdale would be closer to 1,700 student schools, similar to San Mateo and Aragon, and these numbers aren't supporting that. I think it's probably closer to a 1,600 student school long term. And I think that's what we're going to allow them to build. They go through a 2-year cycle for making adjustments. So they want to make sure their house is the same for those 2 years. And so I think the next 2 years, we should look at them for 360.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations and the enrollment projections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, trustee Lamb made the motion, trustee Dwyer made the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley,
Yes.
I'll vote yes. The motion passes 5-0.
Turn up the light, yeah.
Well, are you gonna make it?
I'm telling you, don't hang out with preschool kids.
Okay, N1, approval of personnel actions.
We have personnel actions and addendum. We have a couple recognitions. Nicolene McMullen, English teacher at San Mateo High School, is retiring on May 27th after 18 years in the district. And Lisa Burke, an English teacher at San Mateo High School, is retiring May 27th after 28 years in the district.
Good long career. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, we got trustee Hanley with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley,
Yes.
I'll vote yes. The motion passes 5-0. Now on to the MOU N2.
Right, we have the MOU and it's divided up into a few sections: health and safety, the in-person learning, illness and quarantines and leaves, and COVID-19 testing and contact tracing. Is there any particular anything you want to discuss, or you just open
No,
it up
but
for
I
comments?
believe there are public speakers.
Okay.
Are there, Ms. Chalkley?
There's Joelle Kaufman, who I just promoted, and then Jessica Rosenbaum, who I will promote shortly.
Who's promoted? Oh, okay.
Okay, I see Jessica. I don't see Joelle. Oh, let me see.
Okay, my apologies. Let me find Joelle. I thought I'd promoted her.
We want to start with Jessica while you're wanted. We'll start with Jessica and then you can bring Joelle. Okay.
Okay, now both ladies are in.
Okay. Jessica, would you proceed since we had kind of queued you up there? So you want to take your 3 minutes and make your comments?
Actually, I'd rather her go first.
Well, geez, excuse me for being board president. Joelle, would you like to make the comments?
I would. Thank you very much, everyone. And let me start with Anush. I'm a BHS parent who's pro asynchronous days. So if you're still here, some of us actually think they're great. So I'm here to ask us to put the students first. I am here to ask us to use our critical thinking and to use science. There are 40 states that are back in school. There is no evidence of spread. We have an agreement that is focused on fears of 584 people that we must make efforts to keep safe. The science has shown it can be done. I applaud Ms. Carlton's report. The MERV 13 filters were updated in August. So work was done on the HVAC. Great job. And the classrooms that don't meet the standards yet, that's a problem to be solved. That's a great critical thinking opportunity to model to our students. We can solve problems because this MOU agreement doesn't do that. It puts, I don't even know where the ideas come from, but it's disagreeing with the CDC, the California Department of Public Health, pediatricians, and what it's putting at all of whatever that fear is ahead of the proven educational, mental health, and equity damage being done to 9,913 students. Orange tier is too late. And board, we need you to say it. We need you to lead here. We've gone too slow. Our students are suffering. The board has to represent 9,913 students. Palo Alto High School announced a return to school in the red by March 1. Sarah and SI, they've been at it, no spread. You've invested in the PPE, you've made safety modifications. And Senator Becker's appeal to the county got approved. So educators and educational staff will be prioritized for the vaccine starting on 2/22. That's fantastic. Not orange, red. You have to represent the 9,913 students and their families. The National Center for Exploited and Missing Children has got a 400% increase in reports. Suicidal ideation is up 3x. The pediatricians are telling you this. COVID isn't the only safety risk that children face. We have to be back in school for their education, for their mental health, and for their safety. We cannot allow 18 months to go by without bringing students into class, into school. Cohorts, let's keep our teachers and staff safe. Let's be respectful. Let's use our critical thinking. And let's use the time between now and after we're in the red, we're there, to get our schools in shape for safety. I made it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, excuse me, Dr. Rosenbaum.
Thank you. And no disrespect to you, Mr. Griffin. I just knew that hers might be a foundation to mine.
That's okay.
I just want to bring the board back to something that I actually brought up many months ago, and that is that every student in the San Mateo Union High School District is entitled to a free, appropriate public education. And I agree with Dr. Black and lots of people that in order for an education to be appropriate, it must be safe. It must be safe for everyone. Where we differ is that I don't limit my definition of safety to the hypothetical decrease of the spread of transmission of COVID on campus, which has been debunked by science that there will be an increase. School safety includes identification and avoidance of child abuse and neglect, avoidance of anxiety, depression, loss of executive functioning and academic skills, loss of social skills, social isolation, loneliness, suicidal ideation attempts, and completions. School safety also includes avoidance of COVID. Avoiding all of those things are part of safety planning and are required for an appropriate education. I've been testing kids in person since early May because that's the only reliable way to gather data to determine students' current needs of functioning. I'm in close proximity with students for hours with COVID precautions in place. Their psychological and educational needs are worth the mitigated risk. In the fall, through the assessment process, it became blatantly clear that teachers who have only met their students via Zoom don't know that they're suffering. Not because they're bad teachers, not because they don't care. They can't tell because Zoom is not a vehicle for that. So they can't support these students effectively. I began collecting data from current teachers and those from last year. And I've come to rely on the data from last year to inform my understanding of students' needs. These teachers are not exposed to the students' social and mental health needs via Zoom. Our kids are at risk, and the only way to know that is to see them and to interact with them. No student that needs access to frequent interactions with a teacher is currently getting an appropriate education. No student that can't use Zoom as expected is getting an appropriate education. Dyslexic kids can't use the chat function effectively. Do teachers know that? Do they know which kids those are? They've never met them. No student that is socially isolated is getting an appropriate education. For years, there's been talk of implementing a curriculum that leads to critical thinking skills. But this MOU is an example that is not grounded in critical thinking. It is not grounded in science, and it does not prioritize safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does the board wish to have any comments, questions? Does the administration have anything to say?
I want to thank the speakers for their comments. I know that you want students back. I'm optimistic that we will get to orange soon. For many people, many of our students will not want to come back, and that we will honor those requests. This is an MOU that builds an expectation that staff will come back. You've heard from some of the staff members about their concerns. These are agonizingly difficult decisions to make when we talk about students' mental health, when we talk about suicide, loneliness, all those things are very difficult. Our bargaining unit worked hard on this. Dr. Black worked hard on this. Dr. Kemke, we think this is a solid proposal that moves things forward. I hear talk about other districts who will do things. I don't know of another high school district that's ready, or high school kids in public situation that are back in this area. And so this gets us a path forward. Furthermore, it gets us in a position where we can start having the serious conversations about next year, which is going to be a whole other conversation that we need to have, and we'll continue to occupy staff and students as we go forward. So we're asking you to approve this, and if conditions dramatically improve, I know, and once again, our teachers will want to come back, and if it's safe, they're more anxious than anybody else to be back in person as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you. So is there a motion?
I think Mr. Hanley has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Trustee Hanley.
Thanks. I'm going to take a few minutes here and talk about this MOU and talk about the situation, maybe expand a little bit on Lahia's comments earlier, because we've been receiving a lot of emails. And I just think there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation in the community about what we can do and what we can't do and what we have done and haven't done. And I just really want to take a few minutes and talk about what's out there. You know, we've been told that we're, you know, dragging our feet and moving too slow and that sort of thing. And, you know, I just don't think that's accurate. I think we've been pushing as hard as we can, and as hard as it's been feasible over the past many months. There's been, you know, even if you go back to when the county was in orange for a relatively brief period of time, when they were in orange, there wasn't the availability of testing. There wasn't the availability of contact tracing that there is now. So it didn't allow the movement that is allowed now. And there's a lot of assertions about what the CDC says about school safety. And when I go to the CDC site, I see it a lot more nuanced than the CDC saying that schools are safe. There's a whole bunch of categories of levels of risk that the CDC lays out, and that's laid out against community spread. And so, you know, there's not a flat out statement anywhere that I see on the CDC website that says schools are safe. Schools are safe under certain conditions when you mitigate the risk and when the community spread is at a certain level. And I feel comfortable that our plan, when implemented, is at a rate, reduces that risk to a low level, according to the CDC site. But it's a mitigated risk, and we're weighing that risk against the other risks that the speakers have laid out. We're weighing it against the risk of not opening, and we are trying to make determinations that are very tough determinations right now. So let me talk about this MOU and negotiations and collective bargaining. People who know me and have followed me for any amount of time know that I have significant differences with CTA across the board around seniority, accountability, evaluation, tenure, a whole range of education policies. CTA and I are, have a lot of differences, but it's the public policy. The public policy of California gives enormous power to CTA, teachers unions, and we're required to negotiate with them, and they have the power to make or block a lot of education policies. I mean, that's the public policy, and we've had opportunities to change that, and that hasn't happened. And that hasn't happened because the public policy of California, expressed through votes in 2005 by the electorate and through the legislative process, has repeatedly given the teachers unions more and more authority. So you're seeing the result of them having a lot of authority and a lot of power. So when people are writing to us and saying, why doesn't the board just change this? Why doesn't the board just vote and say, we'll just come back in red? Why doesn't the board just open the schools? Well, the board can't do that except under certain conditions. I mean, and I don't think it's widely known because there's no reason that you would know this. There's no reason that you would know the collective bargaining process in the public sector, where in order for us to impose conditions upon the teachers union, we would have to declare an impasse. And then we would have to go to mediation. And then if we don't settle in mediation, which would take several months right now to find a mediator and then go through that mediation process. And then there's a process called fact-finding, where you bring in an independent authority to determine what the facts are. And at that point, we could impose a contract on the union. And at that point, they could decide to strike. Well, at that point, we are probably 5-6 months down the road. We are probably into next fall. And we are also probably at a very extreme emotional point with our union. So this is what we face. The board doesn't have the authority to sit up here tonight and look at this MOU and say, we are going to amend this by ourselves and just impose it tonight on our union. I want the public to understand that we can't do that. I mean, we could vote to amend it, but then it goes back to negotiation. It doesn't go into force. It goes back to negotiation, and they would have to agree to what we amend it to. I don't think that's widely understood, at least by the people that are sending me emails. They think that this is a legislative body and we're making laws and we can just pass this as a law and it goes into effect. And that's not the way it goes. We could amend it. We could say, we're rejecting this and all the schools open when it goes to red instead of orange. Okay, we could do that. But then it goes back to negotiations with the union and they have to agree to that before. So I just want everybody to understand that. And that's where this has been really tough for me, because I don't like this agreement. I'll tell you, I don't like this agreement. And I don't like it for exactly the reasons that people have been coming up and saying this. I don't like that we don't open until orange. I don't like that there's a provision in here that in purple, if we go back from orange to purple, they have potentially the option to basically close down the in-person learning and go back to distance learning. I don't like that. But I'm telling you that the board has been negotiating very hard, and the board didn't like that. The board didn't like either of those provisions, but we couldn't get them to agree to other provisions. And so the question before the board tonight is not whether we can take this agreement and make it a perfect agreement and arbitrarily adopt it, but is this going to move us forward? And I don't like this agreement, but here's where I'm coming out is, do we move forward? And, Mario Cuomo said, you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. And prose is often not pretty. And this is not pretty. But I'm going to vote for this tonight because we're at February 11th. And if I send this back, I feel if I send this back, if I reject it, and I say we've got to go back to negotiations, after we've pounded on this hard, we've been negotiating on this hard for months. And this is where we've gotten with our team. And the teachers have moved from being extremely not wanting to come back to be willing to come back under these conditions. We've got to move forward. And so I'm gonna vote for it. I don't like it, but I'm gonna vote for it because we need to move forward. And sometimes the prose isn't pretty, but it's what we got to do to move forward. So I realize that was very long, and I'm sorry, but that's what I felt like I needed to say.
Trustee Land, you want to follow that up?
I don't know, but Peter, it wasn't as ugly as you think. It wasn't bad. I really do appreciate Mr. Hanley's long discussion of what was going on, because we have really made an effort to negotiate and try to get back as quickly as possible. I think that's my priority. I will also agree that this is not my preference. This is not an MOU that I like. I would have liked to have seen us go back in red. I would have liked the whole point about going purple and then closing. I don't think that's a good idea, but this is what I do know. I may not agree with everything what Peter's saying, but I do know this. This negotiation between the administration and the union is honest, it's partnership, it's working together, it has the best interest of safety. And I really do want to see us make movement. The one thing that really convinced me to change and really support this is something that Bob said. An MOU is an agreement, and that agreement can be renegotiated as things go better and as we see things progress. And I do really believe that we've worked really hard. I've seen it in every meeting that we've gone where it's gotten better and better. I think it's been hard for us, but we've created these plans. We've looked at work, what the facilities department has done, the technology department has done, what we've done with nutrition, what we've done all this time with our teachers and improving the teaching online as well. this has been a huge lift for our teachers, for our staff, and we've made progress. I really am proud of that. And I see that we're really trying to make a safe environment for our students and our staff and our teachers to come back. And if this gets us one step closer to that, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to vote for it. So that's where I'm at.
Any other comments by the board? Trustee Dwyer.
Okay, I'm going to try not to cough. I think that, the 40 states that are open, I have a sister who's a teacher in one of them, and I can tell you that her school has been shut down maybe 8 times since they started due to positive testing and the need to, because of COVID. I mean, they start up, they shut down, they start up, they shut down. And that's been a really trying experience on the students and the teachers. And she calls me all the time because she's either in school, she's out of school, and it's really, she's really struggling with it. I think a lot of what we hear and what we see and what everyone is feeling is fear, and we're all dealing with fear and the students are dealing with fear. It's all that fear of the unknown. And yes, there's science, and the science is this one day, and then the next day there's something new, and now we have a mutation, and who gets a shot? There's just more than enough fear to go around. The MOU isn't perfect, and it's not going to solve anything. And if things get bad and we need to shut down because of purple, then we need to shut down. Because we not only have to educate students, we need to protect them. We need to keep them safe when they're in our care, our custody. That's part of our job, and we need to safely educate them in the best way we can. And I think that so many people in the district have worked very hard to try to achieve that, to be able to bring students back to school. And I agree with what Peter said about how complicated it is negotiating things. But the focus that I took when I looked at it was that June 1st, it's over. It's an MOU for a short period of time. I don't know about you, but January just blew by. We're in almost the middle of February already. March, April, May. I pray that we turn orange quickly. And who knows? And I pray we don't go back to purple. And I think with all the vaccines coming out, our odds are getting better and better. But I have to support it because everyone who's worked on it has put everything into it. And we're not giving up. We're trying to move forward, and we need to start to kind of move on with this so that we can focus on summer and fall, because if the vaccines do get put out to everyone, maybe we can have real school again. And it's not going to be the same. Everyone's going to have to be much more safety conscious, but that's not a bad thing if all the kids can get back to school. And my heart goes out to the freshmen who haven't even seen their school, and the seniors who are going to, who have a good chance of graduating without having their senior year. And sophomores and juniors, of course, they're all struggling. And I think that the district is doing everything they can. If people need more support, call the district office and ask for it, because I can guarantee you that Superintendent Skelly will find someone to help your student. That our intent is to do that. So I've said enough. Thank you.
There's been a lot of good comments. There was, I think, maximum effort to negotiate this MOU on the part of both the District Teachers Association and the administration. I know the board, I don't think anybody that's on the board is happy about the way the agreement, the MOU, where it landed, and I'm not sure the teachers were all that happy themselves. I'm kind of a practical person about a lot of things, and I think Trustee Hanley mentioned this. If we don't take this as an opportunity to get back in the classroom with the students, we have another process that is well defined and prescribed that sends us back to the negotiations on this MOU, and it's very well possible that we end up in a protracted negotiation that just derails this process. So I'm going to vote for this, and you know, let's give it the best effort we can to get the students back in the classroom. Let's get some support for these students who are totally stressed, you know, their mental well-being. I think everybody is getting cabin fever from being locked up, and we're seeing it in the news every day. But enough of that. Is anybody else have anything to say? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, Trustee Hanley made the motion. Trustee Land made the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land?
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer?
Yes.
Trustee Hanley?
Yes.
Oh, and I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for their contributions. Let's move on to N3.
These are MOUs with the CSEA. There's several of them. I don't think they're as controversial as the last one. If you'd like me to review any of them, I'm happy to do so.
Does the board wish Dr. Black to review them? Everybody had a chance to review, but is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the MOUs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Trustee Land made the motion. Trustee Hanley made the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga?
Yes.
Trustee Land?
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer?
Yes.
Trustee Hanley?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. The motion passes 5-0. N4, review, discuss, approve the job description for bilingual position for, I guess what? A job description for the new position of board meeting bilingual interpreter. N4.
Can we just make a motion? I make a motion. This is a great thing and I'm glad we're doing it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
So Trustee Dwyer, I believe, got the second. So Trustee Land, you made a motion. Okay, and Trustee Dwyer made the second. Trustee Andrade Zuniga?
Yes.
Trustee Land?
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer?
Yes.
Trustee Hanley?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. It passes 5-0. Mercifully, we're gonna try to get this meeting over before Trustee Dwyer coughs herself to death. So
Sorry.
that's okay. No, I mean, you know, we gotta work. You're working through it. You're a trooper.
I'm working through it.
Q1, Division of Business Services, Staff Housing.
Yes, so I believe we need to promote Mr. Landis Graydon. Are you, is he, hopefully he's here. Thank you, Ms. Chalkley. So this is an item that, I'm going to virtually dismiss the principals who are, might be tuning in. You don't need to stay for this one. Go get some sleep. And so we'll go over this. I think Mr. Graydon is here. I think this should be a brief presentation, and then we're anxious to answer any questions that you might have.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm locating Mr. Graydon. Hopefully we're able to promote him in just a moment.
Just tell him to be speedy.
It's a short presentation, Greg.
No, but we talk a lot.
Well, I won't say no to that.
So maybe I'll just walk us through these slides as best I can, and then if
Dr.
Mr.
Scully,
Graydon,
he's jumping on momentarily. He'll be here just probably 10 seconds or so.
okay, all right.
Superintendent, this is an opportunity for you to tell one of your 2 jokes that you know.
Oh God.
Oh no.
I might start coughing if he starts joking.
Maybe I'll send it in a staff note now that you've made my joke famous. So I have a joke though, really, if he's not yet here. Why do gorillas have such large nostrils?
Why?
Is that appropriate?
This is a good joke for you to bring back to your kindergarten class, Mr. Land, because they have large fingers.
Ow, ow.
Kaboom.
Ew.
Kaboom.
That's a daddy.
Ew. Ew.
So, Ms. Chalkley, any luck?
I'm sorry, we're still waiting on Mr. Graydon. Do we want to move to the next item and come back to him?
Yeah, let's do that. Could
Okay.
we go to R1? This is the calendar for the 21-22 school year. There may be additional meetings as in the past. There was a question about the April meeting. April schedule, we have 2 meetings there. Typically with spring break, we've only had 1, but this at least gives us a start to those discussions. So we're looking for some input.
Trustee Land.
Okay, so nobody's gonna like me, but can we I need to look at this on my calendar now that it's outlined and get back to you. Can we do it at the next one?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I see the date. I love it. I'll look at it and then I'll confirm that there's no.
That's fine. We'll bring it back next meeting. And then there's some policies here that are fairly.
Before we leave the calendar, I just as soon just set one meeting in April. If we need another meeting, then we can add it rather than set 2. Because I think even trying to schedule 2 meetings with spring break is awkward.
Yeah.
Agreed. And September 23rd is my birthday, but I'll not worry about that.
And we want to meet on September 23rd.
Okay, we'll bring this back for you next time.
Maybe we'll have a cake if we're meeting in person.
Sounds awesome.
Okay, then we also have these board policies for you to take a look at. We welcome your input, and otherwise they come back on consent.
Any questions on the board policies?
No, they looked okay to me.
I was just going to ask about the civility one.
Yeah, that was a interesting one.
That is from the district, or did we borrow that from somewhere?
No, we borrowed that from somewhere. That's one of the policies that we hadn't adopted. I think it became back in 2010. I don't know how we missed it. And we read it and we thought that it comported to how we usually do things and expect things from people.
Okay. I'm glad we have a civility policy.
So
I'll just add one point is that, in our community, there have been some violence done against elected officials. And so if you look at the policy, there isn't, that was an addition that staff made that wasn't on the original policy. I see Mr. Graydon is here now. So you're the last item on the night, Mr. Graydon. So you stand between us and adjournment. So on you go.
Oh, so much pressure. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. Really, it is. Has everyone had a chance to review the slides? Because I am happy to kind of just go through the first slide, give you some kind of general overview, and you're welcome to just ask questions if you see fit, but you can go on to the next slide. And basically what we wanted to do here, and this really lays out the strategy, districts have, what we've tried to do is think outside the box. So obviously the fourth one, entitle and build on district-owned property, is one that districts are typically doing. That's what we've done, about 15 to 17 of these studies over the last several years. And most of the districts are building on their own land. But we also want to provide some additional options. The first one is to acquire an existing multifamily building The second is if there are opportunities to acquire a building that could be adaptively reused. So certain retail zonings allow for mixed use developments. The third option is to acquire land that's already entitled. That means that a developer has acquired land, taken it through the process, or is in the middle of the approval process for entitlements, and then acquire it at that point and build. And what that does is save you time. So that's really the 4 options. If you want to walk through the rest of the details, what we try to do is just kind of give you a very high level sketch of the various steps for each option.
So Landis, could I just ask a clarifying question? When you say entitled vacant land, could you just clarify what entitled actually means?
That's a very good clarification. Thank you for prompting me. Sometimes we get caught up in the vernacular. Entitlement is the process in which an applicant applies to a local jurisdiction for a permit. So in other words, a tentative map, which means that you're going through the development process, which requires a planning commission often and a city council. So that's when you see a notice, developer proposes to build a project and they have to get permission to build from the city. So they get entitled to build based on the development plan. So that's what entitlements means. It really means going through the city process to get final approval to build a certain project. And that usually takes 12 to 18-month process on average.
Is that something that happens very often? In other words, a developer would have gone all the way through the process on vacant land and then decide to sell it to somebody else? Does that happen very often?
It happens often in certain markets. There are certain folks that's what they specialize in. They will acquire an as-is property, take it through the entitlement process, already having determined who the end buyer will be. You see that a lot in residential land. Someone will acquire a property, get it entitled to build a certain number of, let's just say, homes as an example, and then turn around and sell it to a home builder. It takes away the risk. Entitlement is very risky because there's no guarantee that you're going to get the approval. So, but there's a nice profit margin in it for developers. And there's a difference between a developer and a builder. Some folks are the builder developers. Some folks are just developers where they will entitle it and then sell it to a builder. Does that help? Did I give you clarification?
So is that the hardest and longest one of the 4 choices?
It would, well, for you, let's say that you said if there were sites available that have existing entitlements, that would probably be the second fastest because you're going straight to building. So the fastest is to buy an existing property that's already an apartment complex. The second fastest is to find land that's already been through the permitting process. And then you can just build it if you agree with what you would be. Obviously, you wouldn't purchase unless you agreed with what the permits are entitling you to do. The longest will be probably the 4th because you're starting from scratch. You have to do a lot of planning and then go through the entitlement process and then go to the construction process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. These are all just kind of rule of thumb, right? Where I'm not being too specific, but this is just to give you a general overview. If you want to go on to the next slide, I can just see if there's anything of note. This is just laying out kind of what the process would entail. I'm just right now, just in your district, there's about 39 units on the market with a collective value of 19 million across the 3 properties. And it's a traditional brokerage process. You submit a non-binding letter of intent, which means that if you're interested, you're making a formal offer, but it's non-binding. You go through a negotiation process. You have time for due diligence. You decide to close if you like everything that you see. Any questions about that? Okay.
Is there any advantage? In other words, if we're buying it for the purpose of making it teacher housing, is there any advantage that occurs that we get from converting it to teacher housing?
I wouldn't say advantage. I'd say you would save time having an asset that you can put immediately into service, but it's going to come with its own challenges. For instance, there are going to be existing tenants that probably are not district employees. So there's going to be an entire situation of do we buy out the leases? Do we relocate? And then are the units themselves configured in such a way that are desirable? Maybe you have to do remodeling. So there are pros and cons to each approach.
Okay. Any
questions on this slide? Okay, you can flip to the next one. This one is the most kind of out of the box thinking. Oh, no, this is we skipped a slide. I think there should be number 2. Oh, it went from 1 to 3. Oh, okay. This one is what we already talked about. This one is where you just find land that's already been approved and you just build it. Same kind of process, submit a non-binding letter of intent, negotiate a purchase and sale agreement. The due diligence is really where we get into, do we like the design? Do we like the layout? If there's anything we need to change, and you go straight to construction. Well, you'd have to get building permits and such. But this is kind of hybrid as far as time is concerned. Any questions about that? Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, there 2 and 3 were out of order. This is the most out of the box because there are adaptive reuse. You could find a property, hotel, motel, a retail property where you could gut it basically and build residential units on the inside. I don't see this as a very high probable option, but we just want to include it just in case something comes up. We have seen nice conversions happen, but it's just something to think outside the box. There is a lot to do here because you have to acquire the building, you have to make sure it's suitable for residential development, go through that process of converting it. You're going to have to get entitlements, then do the construction. But it just presents another option just in case there was a building we really liked. And you can go to the last. Are there any questions on this one? Okay, and the last one is before it's fine. This one is just building on your own site. So this is where we've kind of spent most of our time with districts evaluating district-owned property. And I just will take just an extra couple minutes on this one, just so we're clear. What you first have to do is find a site. And we've had districts that say study 4 sites, study 5 sites. So we walk through a process to identify which sites are developable. And you go through a development and a financial feasibility. So those are kind of 1, 2, and 3 kind of just talks about what that looks like. I want to emphasize a survey, an employee survey is very important, right? Because you need to understand not only demand, but what the needs are of your employees. And then we do a salary schedule, which kind of helps you determine what affordability is. That's your market assessment. Site assessment is just looking at the particulars of the site, density, zoning, size, development standards. And then the financial feasibility is how you pay for it. Some districts have sites that they could sell and monetize, other districts do bonds, other districts do COP, some districts do hybrid. You go through the design process and construction process. And then the 5th is on all of them, taking the time to figure out post-construction, post-lease up, what the asset and property management plan are going to be. So we just kind of try to lay out high-level steps for you. And I think that's about it for all the options that we think are feasible. And I can answer any questions you may have.
So on number 2, the acquiring of a building to convert to housing, does converting it to teacher housing, does any of the state legislation or that's been passed in the recent years give us any kind of advantage or priority in converting a building to teacher housing?
I don't know if it'll give you a priority in terms of your place in line at the local jurisdiction. What it will allow you to do is provide it to your teacher. So legislation does protect you being able to lease it specifically to district employees. But in terms of going through the entitlement process or the construction process, I don't think you're going to have any speed get to the front of the line because it's going to have to go through. It's going to have to go through the normal jurisdictional process.
Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts, clarifications I could provide?
Land, is there likely to, the one thing that has changed is the work environment, and people are staying home to work a lot more. There's going to be a lot of excess office capacity. Is that going to change the mix, or is that going to decrease? And actually, it is decreasing prices of commercial properties. Is that going to make it any more feasible to try to acquire something and rezone it, or is that just totally, something commercial going to multifamily or whatever you know more about that than I do.
No, that's really just a function of supply and demand, as you said, right? And
we're losing him.
Experts, but what we've seen is folks that's all they do. They pandemic. Retail, on the other hand, we know retail struggles that may present themselves, but in your market, within your district, you don't have a lot of just classic inventory like a larger, like a older city, which is a bunch of older inventory. So I think in your area, developers.
So Landis, can I suggest that you turn off your video and maybe that'll
There's
give
a
you
lot of
bandwidth.
money in your area. So hear me okay?
No.
No,
Can you hear
you're
me?
breaking up a lot.
Okay. I'm patient with the Wi-Fi around here. Is it still breaking up?
No, that's better.
You're better.
Okay. I was just saying in your area, finding development opportunities is not as easy because there's a lot of money in the market.
I think I got that. There's a lot of money in the market. Got it.
Am I breaking up again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in the market, and therefore there's a lot of competition. So.
Okay. Any more questions?
So in terms of next steps, can I propose that we noodle this around a little bit? I don't think you've given us any direction, and we're asking it at 10 o'clock on a heavy duty board meeting is a lot. But we'll continue to noodle this around it and then go from there as we see opportunities and learn more.
Okay, is Trustee Land your hand up?
Yes, my hand is up. I'm just going to say it's good that we were broadening our horizons, and on a noodle on that, it's a good thing. So broaden, let's just see. There are limitations, and I appreciate Landis telling us that.
Trustee Dwyer.
You're muted. Linda, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. I think this is one of Greg's go slow to go fast situations where right now isn't the time to really do anything, but it's a really good time to explore the options, all of the options, including building conversions and acquiring apartment buildings. Because I think if you do the math, we're probably going to see that building something from scratch, being a public entity, will be much more expensive than buying something already built. And even if we have to convert it or do work on it, and it will delay it, we could get really delayed. So it would make sense to me to look at the alternative options as much as we can to see what we can do, so that when we have the funds, we're ready to make a move to acquire staff housing. There, I said it. I can still talk.
I agree. And I like everything except that Greg's go slow to go fast, because then I read somebody that said it was to go slow, apparently, that we don't go fast.
Well, I didn't say go slow to go slow.
But it was either in the newspaper or in somebody's response to us that go slow was to go slow.
Deliberate, concentrated. Anyway,
well, thank you, Landis, for that presentation. It gives us something to think about. And what are we, boodling or noodling or whatever we're doing?
Canoodling?
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
Okay, well, it's time to adjourn the meeting if there's no further comments.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done here. Do we have anybody want to add something? Because we still got a minute or two before 10.
I had an idea I wanted to share with Laura, so I was hoping we I could stay on with her for 1 minute before we ended.
So can I suggest we end the meeting and that, Laura, you can call Linda. I'd rather.
Well,
have
just,
this
okay,
meeting.
just to say, look at this, the school logo on the screen. Do you see it? That's what I just want a minute to talk about that.
So can you guys call each other because we need
We
to.
could do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right.
There was a committee to replace that logo about 10 years ago.
Okay, we're ending the meeting. Good night.
It's not